To say. Without further ado, Mr. Ben Teoh. Hello, Ben
Hey,
Teoh.
hello, how are you? I was just like tweeting, no, not tweeting, I was just putting on Discord that it's Lego. It's definitely Lego. Yeah. So,
I 100% agree, Ben.
oh dear. This is great. I am so pumped for today. I was just like going through the Discord channel, loving seeing everyone. It's been so long since I've sort of been in this sort of social comms field. I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit about what we've been doing at the libraries with you. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen. So thanks for the intro, Jen. Like Jen said, I'm Ben. I work for the libraries. If you want to tweet at me, Instagram, whatever, there's my handle. And today, what I want to do is just have a bit of a chat to you guys about I guess the thinking behind what it takes to go into online video and content for an organization which traditionally may not do that. So if you're a consultant, if you work for local government or libraries or, or a not-for-profit organization where traditionally technology may not be the forefront of thinking, I just want to share a little bit about what we've been going through and some of the thought processes behind it. So maybe that'll help you if you need to talk to someone, or if you've got some decision makers that you need to influence or to have a conversation about content with. Hopefully today's session will help you with that. If you have any questions about the stuff that I'm sharing today or about Lego, feel free to ask in the quick Q&A. All right. So for today, what we're going to do is have a look at a few things. So I just want to have a quick chat about myself and my background. Then I'll talk a little bit about what City of Marion Libraries have been doing on social media. I'll talk about our approach to the COVID-19 restrictions, some of the lesson learned, and of course our community outcomes in the future. So let's kick it off. So I admittedly don't work in social media or comms at this stage. Going back a few years, I was, and it was fantastic. I used to work for an organization called Connecting Up. Some of you may know about them. And I was working in online content and community there. So I've been dabbling in social media for about 10 years. And I was thinking, 10 years doesn't sound like a lot, but I guess in the social media world, that's heaps. We were still having fun with MySpace back in the day. But for me, social media has always been about, how do we connect people to other people and create community? So while a lot of the conversation is often about how do we promote on social media, I really love the idea that we can connect with people. So I've just got a few pictures here, which sort of, this is part of my social media history. When I first got into social media and was exploring that, it was great to meet other people. So the Social group, or Social Adelaide, I don't know if there was ever a consistent sort of description on how we pronounce that, but fantastic community. And it's really good to see a lot of you still in it and still doing it. And a lot of you are still here. For a little while, I was an ambassador for Hootsuite. As part of my role at Connecting Up, we also ran a technology for social good community group called NetSquared Adelaide, and we tied in with an international group, and we use social media a lot in there, especially to help organisations and not-for-profits use social media. At a personal level, back in the day, we also used social a lot for this community group called Adelaide Flash Mob. And I wasn't sure if I was going to add this in here, but then Kelly on Discord was like, hey, remember when we met at one of our No Pants tram rides? And I'm like, yes. That was an amazing experience for me, knowing that, you could create an event on social media and have a whole bunch of strangers rock up and do some fun stuff in public with you, like riding the tram without any pants on. So yeah, social media has been fantastic. And outside of my professional life, I also use it as a hobby. Before my kids grew up and started taking over all my Lego, I used to take photos with Lego and post them online. So you can still see them. If you look up Brick Pixels on Instagram, they're there. But that led into some work where I got to work on Adelaide. So if any of you have kids or if anybody else loves Lego, a few years ago, you probably would have heard about Adelaide. It was a huge Lego show that happened across a few Easters. And it was really, really fun to be able to, mix my love for Lego with some work. So that was awesome. But like the intro said, I currently work in the space of digital inclusion and digital literacy, and in particular in libraries. So I did some work with GoDigi where we created content to teach seniors how to get online. And that sort of really inspired me to think about, how do we, we can benefit from social media, and I've done all this stuff with communities, like how do we get other people to experience the same sort of stuff? And so for the past few years, I've been working with libraries or in libraries to do this. And my current role, I get to do some digital literacy training. So we teach people how to use technology, but we also deliver digital training for kids. So we do like code clubs. We have got a Lego club that we used to run as well. And my team also runs all of our community programs. And I'll talk to you a little bit about them later on because they're really important to what we do in the libraries. If you haven't been to a library recently, that's fine. You're not the only one. But libraries are still a really important part of the community. So for a lot of people who don't have access to computers, we offer that. Of course, we've got books and we've got e-resources. We've got a whole bunch of things that we offer to the community. Just to put that into perspective, over the last quarter of last year, we had about 100,000 visitors come through our libraries in the city of Marion. We've had about 170,000 items borrowed in those years. And for the community programs that we run, so that's, everything from our little baby sessions to our adult sessions, we had about 4,500 people attend those sessions just in that quarter of last year. So libraries are really vibrant and we're doing some really exciting stuff. So if you don't have a library card, go and get one, go visit your library and say hello. They're awesome spaces. But I've been with the City of Marion for about 3 years now, and it's a fantastic team to be working with. And what's awesome is that we have the flexibility and the freedom to do some really cool stuff on social media. Now, like I said, I don't do our social media pages. I leave that up to Paula and Rob. They do a fantastic job. I'm focused more on our programs, but as part of our programs, we get to deliver some content. So we support our social media team with the content that we're producing for our programs. And our social media has been, it's been a lot of fun. So we get to do a whole bunch of stuff online. So a couple of big things that we've done over the past couple of years. Back in the day when Celeste Barber was doing, her challenges and they were getting a lot of notice, we did a Celeste Barber challenge. So we took her picture and then I think this was her book. Her book's challenge accepted, and then we got some of our staff members to copy that in a very Celeste Barber-esque way. And they got a lot of traction. That was pretty funny. We had a lot of fun with that. More recently, we recreated the Friends introduction. And Paula, our social media person, she wrote a song about coming to the libraries. And that was huge. Like we put that together with the team. And I don't know if you've worked with people who aren't necessarily the most extroverted people. They don't necessarily want to be on camera. A lot of our library staff are like that. And so it was a big push to actually get them to go on camera, and we filmed them. And in a couple of hours, we quickly took our shots that we needed. We spent about a day piecing it all together and editing it. We added Paula's song that she made and we put it out there for the world to see. And that got a lot of traction. And we had a much bigger response than we expected to that video. And we ended up going on Sunrise and one of the other morning shows as well to talk about City of Marion's doing this Friends video online. So that was huge. But I guess not everything is big and not everything is going to be as popular. But the social media channels that we use are primarily Facebook and Instagram. And both of those have slightly different audiences. On Instagram, I think, we have a bit more of a play. And so we have these things, you can see these 3 images at the bottom. Those are our book faces. So this is something that happens, a lot of libraries do this. You get a book and then you sort of complete the picture of the book with your face, or in the bottom right-hand corner, in that case, with arms. So that's, they're a lot of fun, and they're a great way to involve the staff in our social media presence as well. And I think that's really important, to get staff involved, especially people who might not necessarily be heaps active on social media, but involving them in how we tell the story about what libraries do. So those are our book faces. In the middle here, you've got this thing where it says impossible. That's a new initiative that Paula and Rob are doing. Those are called blurred book covers. And so we use Instagram there. People can just guess, what the book cover is. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. That's meant to be at the impossible difficulty. If you know what that is, maybe pop it in Discord and I'll say yay or nay. But on our Instagram page, we use that gallery. So as you swipe through, the images get less blurred, so you can guess. And then you can write a comment and say, at what difficulty did I get this? So if you got it at the impossible difficulty, or the hard, or the medium, or the easy, you can say, yep, I got it. And so there's a few photos there. So if you want to go and check those out, have a look at City of Marion Libraries on Instagram. But of course, we also do our regular promotional things. So we do some user-generated content. So we celebrate our volunteers, for example, or we might have some some photos from events, or sometimes we discover notes inside the books that we get at libraries. So it's fantastic. I think if you ever wanted to work for an organization where there's just so much content possibilities, libraries are awesome. It's a content gold mine with libraries. We also have our own podcast that we run called Literary Anything. So if anybody loves books and reading, Paula and Jane do that, and that's been quite popular, and they do some deep dives into some of the books that come into the libraries. And they have got their own Facebook group as well. So, we've been exploring social media in different ways. So that's sort of a quick snapshot of what we've been up to. But I guess, up until, early March, things were hunky-dory. We could do our programs, we could do stuff on social media, and we've been building up this following. March 21, I think, was the date that we ended up shutting our doors to the public. It was really difficult because, libraries, the bulk of what we do is face-to-face, and the bulk of our library programs, so the team that I lead, our programs are all face-to-face. And so there were some big questions about, okay, well, what now? What happens now that we can't actually meet people? What happens with all of these things that we plan? So our team plans 3 months in advance, and we just work to that, and we plan in 3-month chunks. And we have these guides that we print off and we hand out, and people can see, what's on for the next 3 months. That's been our bread and butter in terms of library programs. And we basically had to go through and cancel everything. So everything we had planned, we had cancelled. And that's tough when, your team is used to doing that's what they've been doing for years. And that's what's worked for us. To have to stop that and then think differently was a challenge. And we weren't alone. Like, every library was doing this. We were all sort of working out, okay, well, we've been doing baby bounce and singing songs to babies for, countless years. What happens now? What happens to those families? What happens to these people who rely on the libraries to access the information, to get support and to have those social interactions? What do we do? I guess, it's not just what do we do, it's like, what should we do? You know, should we be doing something? Do we need to be doing something? We weren't even sure early on what, you know, if libraries, you know, can we work from home? Like, what are the things that librarians can do, or people who work in libraries, what can we do at home when most of what we do is in person and with physical items? Thankfully, we were given the opportunity to do some work from home and also work from the library as well. So we didn't have to send everybody home. We just shut to the public. So that gave us some new thinking about, you know, what are the opportunities? And I guess this is where, you know, the title of this presentation was about making that giant content leap. And, you know, for quite a while, we've been using social media really well to promote the library. So we talk about, you know, what's coming up. We can engage people, we can connect with people, and have those conversations online, but it is still in that engagement space and in that promotion space or marketing space. But the big leap for us was going from that promotion and then looking at, okay, we have these online channels now. Can we actually take all of our services, all of our programs that we're doing, and move those online? And I think if you work in social media, you're probably quite savvy with, you know, video content. You know what's going to work. You know what's out there. You've probably got the tech with you that, you know, you can create really good content. But I'm talking about engaging a team of people where all of their programs and all of their work has been face-to-face and not necessarily online, and asking them then to say, okay, let's take all of this online. How does this feel? How is this different? Like, would we ask our baby bounce people, for example, to sing songs to a screen when they're used to singing to a small audience of people? How different is that? So there were lots of questions for us to do. So, you know, questions about technology. What software did we need? What hardware did we need? What were the skills that we needed to give our staff in order to get them online? What sort of access do we need to give? That's a huge question. If you are the comms person or you're working as the social media person, you're probably the ones with the keys to all the accounts. All of a sudden, when you've got a team of people who now need to publish content online, how do you manage that? Thankfully, what we were able to do is have a sit down with everyone and just talk out, you know, what access do we all need? Who's going to do what? And we were able to use the permissions in Facebook, for example, to manage who can do what. So that was one way. But I guess these are the conversations that need to be had. So if you're, you know, if you're working for an organization, or like I said, or if you're consulting for an organization, you want more staff to be involved with either creating content or helping out manage comments or anything like that. You know, how do you work with that team? Is it something formal that you have to write down? Is it just a conversation? Does everybody understand the differences between or how to schedule things? So, you know, all of these sorts of questions needed to be nutted out. The other question then is also, you know, what barriers are there? You know, we've talked about some barriers that the team might have, but also what are the barriers for the people who we've been reaching? So, for example, if we want to take a digital literacy program online, how does that work when we're trying to teach people how to use Facebook and we're thinking of broadcasting that lesson on Facebook? It doesn't really work. So we need to really think about our audience as well and what barriers they might have. And finally, you know, what sort of support is needed? For me as a leader, and for me as someone who I feel like I've got a really good grasp on social media through work and through my hobbies and through my professional life. And I love just playing with new technology and having fun with it. What support did I need to give my team members? Because this, you know, not only am I asking them to do something completely new to them in terms of taking their content online, but it's also encouraging them to keep learning, and also to encourage them to do it in a way where they don't feel like, oh, we're not getting 1 million shares, so, what's the value of this work? So having those conversations about what are we actually trying to get out of this whole process. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of slides. So this is the leap. How do we go from social media purely as a promotional engagement platform through to being a service delivery and offering something through social media or through online video? Okay. So the big question for us, and I think this is the point at which we knew we were going to go online, we had to stop and not just say to ourselves, oh, well, we used to do this thing and we're just going to do that exact same thing, but we're going to do it in front of the camera. We didn't want to have that approach. And the reason is because, the online world there's a completely different context to what we do when you're online. And so for each of our areas that we have programs for, we had to go back to the drawing board and think to ourselves, okay, who is our audience for those programs and what is it that they need right now? And what's really important about that is that the context was so unique. So we're here in the middle of a global pandemic. Shops are shutting, businesses are shutting, schools, we're coming into the school holidays. There was a lot of uncertainty about the actual health risks. There was a lot of uncertainty around decisions that government was making. So there's a lot of, all of this distrust and people weren't sure what was going on in the world, early, mid, late March. And so we had to think about, what are their concerns right now? So for each of our areas, we decided to look at our audience and then try and form something that would relate directly to them. Now I'm going to say right away, I'm not here saying that these were massive successes and we've had, massive uptake on these. The reality is we haven't. Some have been more successful, and I say successful as in like more people have used them than others. But part of the success in this is not just our community engagement, but for me as a team leader, it's also the skills that my team are learning as well. And I'll talk about that too. But let's just step through each one of these that I've got on the screen here. So first is Library Through the Lens. So our adult programs support officer, Tracy Noah, she was so keen to take her programs online. Very early in the piece, we found that people were keen to do online webinars. So she contacted a whole bunch of authors and we looked at, what do we need to do this? We contacted a few people, including the team at Refuel. So shout out to Ryan to find out, what is the best webinar platform? Because it had been quite a few years since I was doing webinars at Connecting Up. So, what's the best webinar platform? Everyone was talking about Zoom, but was it the best option? We did end up going with Zoom. And so we started delivering those. And those adult programs, those workshops, the author talks have been awesome. People have loved them and it's been great. But we also knew that there was a big audience that didn't know how to use webinars. And so we made sure that we had this other option here called Be Connected, where we ran one-on-one telephone support. So if people wanted to get onto webinars but didn't know how, we had a team who could talk to them on the phone and walk them through it. And our Be Connected team also did webinars on the basics of using technology. So we took our digital literacy workshops online, but also had that phone support for people. For the kids who we used to normally run coding clubs for, we created this thing called Bricks and Bytes, which is a live Facebook live show, half an hour each week. And this came out of our observations that a lot of parents early on were also saying, oh, I've got my kids at home and all they want to do is play computer games. All they want to do is be on the iPad. And we thought, how can we engage those kids and parents in discovering interesting apps that are educational but fun, get them building with Lego that they might have at home, but also finding other people who are doing interesting things online. So Bricks and Bytes became this show where we get guest speakers talking about, here's Warrawong Sanctuary who do Facebook things. Here's a really fun app about the World Wildlife Foundation, and here's how to build. Here's how to build a panda out of Lego. So we created a half-hour TV show, and that's been great. And we decided to do that live because we wanted that interaction with the Facebook comments. And for our kids programs, I think this was probably the toughest decision, was that we looked at the landscape, and within the first week or so, everyone or a lot of libraries were already doing Baby Bounce. A lot of libraries are doing storytelling. The ABC they reconfigured all their kids shows to be more school friendly and more at home friendly. And so we decided not to do a live or a video of our regular programs, but instead I encouraged the team to create Facebook notes, which would then curate interesting content that parents could find online. So we weren't recreating what was already out there. We decided to go into the curation space. And that was great. They did a really good job about, finding interesting articles, finding videos and songs and craft that was already out there. So they didn't need to reinvent the wheel. And that was challenging because for them, it was a very different skill set that they needed to use to do that content curation. All right. Okay, so in terms of lessons learned in doing all of this, number one, be clear about your decisions. We didn't really have time to do all the, usually with local government, we'd want to do that community engagement piece to actually find out what people would want and, interview them and do all that, but we didn't have time. And so we just had to make a decision and run with it. So we were clear that the purpose of what we were doing wasn't just to keep ourselves busy, it wasn't just to create programs, it was really to meet the needs of the community in the current climate. So that was a really good framework for us to start with. Next was to know our limitations. So I know that we're not a full production studio. We don't have awesome video cameras. We don't have lights. In fact, it was really hard to actually purchase lights because it seemed like everyone was suddenly doing online streaming. And so all the gear was quickly being purchased. Next, understanding the audience's context. This was crucial. Again, it's very different for a parent to come to the library and sit in a workshop space versus sitting on the couch with a phone in your hand. So the content has to match your audience's context. So we would have to approach Facebook Live in a very different way to what we would approach a kids coding program. Next, it was really important for us to try new things. There were times where we did take missteps and we saw a dip in numbers, for example, when we tried to use Eventbrite versus Zoom. So using Eventbrite's online event system, we just found that there were too many barriers for our audience, so we switched back to Zoom. But we had to try that, quickly understand that it wasn't working, and then switch back as soon as we could. So we had to be really nimble, agile, so all of that. So, in this space of a few months, we've really reconfigured a lot of what we do. And finally, don't let the perfect be the enemy of good. If you go back and look at some of the first episodes, actually go back and look at like the past 10 episodes of Bricks and Bytes, you'll see that every episode something goes wrong, like all the time. Things are going wrong, but it's fine. We have fun with it and we're persevering. And what's interesting is that we found that people don't care. Like people at home watching live stuff, even I'm sure for you, you're watching this. I know the team at Refuel are working really hard to make sure everything's polished, but the reality is we understand that things go wrong with technology. We're used to that. So don't try and do things so perfectly that you don't do anything at all. So if we Yeah, so every time we run a webinar, every time we do an episode of Bricks and Bytes, we're learning something different and we improve it for the next round. That's just the process that we have to be in this space right now. So just quickly dive into these two areas. So library through the lens, again, this was for our adult programs. We used Zoom. We did see that great uptake, but it was very much a change in mindset again. So when I say change in mindset, quite often we would think, for a regular program, we think, okay, our audience is our City of Marion community. The people that we can get to speak and present are South Australians. Okay, so this is the traditional mindset that we would have for library programs. But now that we're online, it's interesting to see that our audience is now almost everyone, or anyone who's awake at the time. So that makes us approach things differently. We also realize that we can get speakers from anywhere now as well. And again, anyone who's awake. So we can get speakers from Melbourne and from Sydney or, New Zealand, wherever. And that's been fantastic. And we've seen that people have really, really adapted and to the Zoom webinars. And I'll tell you what, there are traditional thinking that, that older people aren't tech savvy, but if there's an incentive like this sort of program for them to get online, they will learn. We had a story of someone, an older person, they had their grandchild or like 14-year-old grandchild outside their house, standing in the garden, shouting instructions through the window on how to attend one of our webinars. So, where there's a will, there's a way. So don't think that just because we're going online that older people won't be able to do it. If there's an incentive, they will. For Bricks and Bytes, it's our Facebook, I've spoken about this, but it's our Facebook live show. We use software called Switcher Studio. And if anybody wants to have a look at Switcher Studio, feel free to shout out. I'll just skip over this slide because I think we've spoken a little bit about this, about Zoom. Couple of quick tips though. The virtual backgrounds are really fun ways to do like a green screen presentation if you want to show the speaker and the slides at the same time. You could use your virtual backgrounds as a almost like a, you can be in the presentation and you can point to your notes, which is pretty cool. But one to try for later. Okay. I just want to quickly talk about Switcher Studio. I'm just aware of the time. Switcher Studio was something new. We had a whole suite of iPads that we were using for our kids programs, which are now sitting dormant because we couldn't run those programs. And so what we did, we bought some gear and we turned them into a mobile studio. So Switcher Studio is fantastic. You can control it from a single iPad, and then you hook all the other iPads up via Wi-Fi. And then you can live stream to Facebook and to YouTube, or if you've got a custom RTMP stream, you can stream out to that. They do all your lower thirds. You can see you've got different types of angles here. So I've tried to show a few different options. You've got picture in picture. You can have multiple cameras showing. You can do screen sharing. The picture with the orange background is what the switcher, the control panel looks like. So it's quite a fun piece of software. But the essentials, you need good Wi-Fi, you need a good internet connection, and any additional gear is great. So tripod stands or tripod mounts for your iPads are really helpful. An external audio interface is really helpful, and external microphones are really good. But thankfully we had a bunch of that gear already from our podcasts and from, like I said, from our kids programs. So one of the most valuable pieces of software for us for that live streaming has been Switcher Studio. Okay, so I'll quickly look at all of the bits and pieces that we did. But like I said earlier, our measurement for this hasn't necessarily been your traditional measurements that you might consider when you're looking at social media. So we're not necessarily looking at views and shares and likes and comments and click-through rate, all that sort of thing. Because the reality is those aren't going to be massive. just because of the nature, just because of the audience, and this is a changing space. But as a library, as local government, at the end of the day, all of those stats that we might pull out of Facebook or Instagram, they all need to result in some sort of community outcome. And this is really what we measure our performance by, is like, how are we actually impacting people's lives through our activity online and through social? That is what that's what the crunch comes down to. If people are going to ask me, why did you spend time, or why do we spend money on these things? The community outcomes are what matters. And here are just a couple of a few quotes about the value of us moving our programs online when people couldn't come to our programs face to face, where people have been in isolation for 12 weeks and they haven't had a chance to meet their families. This is the stuff that matters. Okay, so my favorite story is probably this one on the left hand. A lady came into the library and she saw our banner for those Be Connected sessions. And we talked to her about webinars and the potential of getting into those. And she said, I have just come out of self-quarantine for 12 weeks, and I'm just coming to the library now. I need help. And so we were able to help her with our phone support, which then turned into her attending webinars and learning new skills. And now, she has this much richer experience with YouTube. Now with her husband, she's re-engaged with him. They're dancing together to the YouTube music. It's amazing. And I think she's 84 years old. And you can also see other comments there about the benefits of us moving online and making those steps to make that leap, from just doing social and doing online to promote to actually delivering content. Okay, so what does the future look like? I put this picture in and I thought, oh man, I just think of like a lot of the people working in social now and think that, I don't know, maybe I'm showing my age too much here. This is like original Power Rangers. The thing that I'm most excited about is that my staff now have new skills. I feel like we've all jumped into this, and even though right now I think we're all feeling a little fatigued by the amount of pivoting we've had to do, or the amount of change we've had to do in such a short amount of time, I'm really happy and really proud of the team, how they've adapted and how they have, learnt how to use Zoom. They've learnt how to write Facebook notes. They've learnt about content curation. They've learnt about what it means to fail, but to learn. They've learnt, how to move quickly and the amount of pressure and the stress that comes with that. But I think, we're going to come out of the other end with this with a much richer experience and much richer amount of opportunities that we have now that we can do these online things. So we'll keep the webinars going. We've got Bricks and Bytes going for the next term. We'll keep doing things, the content curation with the kids, until things get to, relative normality. But even beyond that, we'll probably still keep some of these things that we've learned going. So there you go. I guess that's just a quick rundown of how a library and library programs, which are traditionally not online, have had to make that giant leap to doing things online, and the challenges that we've faced and the new skills we've learned. So there we go. If there are any questions, happy to take them now.
Hey, Ben, there's actually a lot. And I will say we've only got 5 minutes until Chris Smith.
Sorry.
So let's try our best to answer all of these. If we don't quite get to your question, we'll follow it up on Discord.
Yep.
First one's from Christy. You work in or on digital literacy programs in the community. From your observations, do you think digital literacy is improving?
Yes. I'll probably let's talk really, really quickly about this because I could talk forever.
Can we see you, Ben?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. You don't look at Power Rangers anymore. I don't. What's...
Well, you're answering the questions now, so we'd love to see your face.
Okay, so all right, so digital literacy, really quickly, yes, it's improving. I think what's really interesting about the COVID restrictions, like I said, is that people have been forced to use technology now, or they see the benefit. And so one of the issues around digital literacy in the past, there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, I don't need to use that," or "I haven't used this before, so I don't want to," but now they have to. So that's been a really, really interesting and really positive thing about the COVID shutdowns. But always happy to talk about digital inclusion and digital literacy. Maybe we can talk about that on Discord.
That's great. Judy asks, how did you connect with people who struggle with technology to get online and up to speed using Zoom? And how did you reach them?
Yep.
If they're not already active online, how did you get to them?
Yeah, great. So for the people who aren't online at all, we had to wait until the libraries reopened. So even when we reopened, we could only have like 10 people in at a time, but we had a chat with them about, if you want to do these webinars, here's some one-on-one phone support. So like I said, we went from phone support to then helping them to get onto webinars, and then they could participate further. We also had we also used not our back catalogue, but our existing contacts who are already doing some of the digital literacy training with us. We could phone them up and say, "Hey, do you need a hand with any of this stuff? This is what we're planning to do." So we kept those communication lines open with them. Because we weren't working from home 100%, we still had access to our phone lists and all that sort of thing. So we could do that from work.
That's great. And Monique kind of wanted to know about those phone call appointments. So if they didn't already have the number or they already weren't engaged with the library, how did they know to call you for help?
Yeah, the reality is we couldn't reach, we couldn't reach new audiences. I think if we had more time, or we knew this was going to be a long-term thing, we'd probably consider doing things like mail outs. As a council, we had the opportunity to pop like flyers into the rates notices and things like that. So there are more traditional outreach tools that we could use if we wanted to. We have a really good relationship with Coast FM, so we can also promote through Coast FM as well.
Awesome. Does the library service have an in-house marketing team who come up with promotions for Library Through the Lens, Brick and Bytes, or is it something that kind of comes from council?
No, we have a marketing person who works across our department. So not just libraries, but he does a lot of work for libraries. So he does all of our graphic design. So if we have an idea, we're like, "Oh, Rob, can you create this?" And he'll come up with an awesome logo. We have a team leader who looks after, a part of her portfolio is marketing across the libraries. And then we have Paula, who's our social media person, as part of that team. But largely, we try to include as many people as possible in the idea generation. And then when it comes to execution, we would then hand it over to the right people, like to Rob and Paula and Jane. So that way we're always coming up with ideas. So it might be a little campaign, or it might be a whole new program. So Library Through the Lens of Bricks and Bytes, we're like, "Hey, this is what we're creating. This is what we're thinking the style and the theme is going to be." And Rob will come up with something and we're like, "Yep, awesome."
I've got a couple more questions here from Monique, Eve and Judy, but I reckon we'll take these over to Discord.
Yep.
And continue the conversation there, because Ben will be hanging around all afternoon, I'm sure. It's almost time for us to cross over to Chris Smith. But I just want to thank you again, Ben, for your time. And it's been a pleasure to have you as a part of Social Media Day today.
No worries. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you on Discord.